Bladie hurts himself, deals massive damage, and does kick-ass VTuber concerts. This is how good Bladie is in honkaistarrail. But first, subscribe and check out the Discord. Look, we're only 80,000 subs to 100,000. So let's get there by tomorrow. Woo! So, Bladie is more complicated than he seems, and I also think his kit can help inform us about some of the deeper mechanics of the game. He essentially has self-vampirism by stealing his own HP and dealing damage. So let's look at that. He has a normal attack that we don't need to bother with, and then a skill that changes his normal attack into this by consuming 30% of Bladie's HP. Using his skill locks off future skill usage and makes it to where you can only use this new modified basic attack for 3 turns. This may initially sound like Bladie is a very skill point friendly character because he only uses a skill point every 3 turns, but they made sure this wasn't the case. Once you pop Bladie's skill, his basic attacks no longer regenerate a point of SP. We'll get into why this matters later, but I wanted to address this early. So let's look at this buffed normal attack. Every time he uses it, it consumes 10% of his HP, then deals split scaling attacks to all enemies, with the targeted enemy getting higher percentages. We then have Bladie's ultimate, which sets his HP to 50% of his max, then deals more split scaling attack and HP damage to the target, with adjacent enemies getting lesser percentages, like with the normal attack. This ultimate also does something interesting by also doing damage based on the damage that he's lost throughout the battle, up to 90% of his max HP. We'll again talk about what this means in a bit. Finally, we have his talent, which is connected to these stacks, like Locha that we spoke of before. When he reaches 5 stacks, Bladie deals damage to all enemies with split scaling and then restores HP by 25% of his max. The way Bladie gets stacks is by HP depletion in any way. Whether that be from when he takes his own HP, or from when an enemy attacks him, or from when he realizes that the meaning behind life is in death, and since he can't achieve death, does he really have meaning? What this looks like is this. You'll start the battle, you'll use his skill, which will take HP, giving you a stack. Then you'll attack in that same turn, also consuming HP, which will give you another stack. You're now at 2 out of 5 stacks. Then you'll need to be attacked or attack an enemy again to get any more. You can also use his technique to enter the battle with a stack by consuming 20% of his HP and dealing 40% of his max HP to all enemies. Also, with his talent, if Bladie doesn't have enough HP to fulfill HP depletion conditions like the 10% or 30% or whatever, he'll be moved to 1 HP instead. When at 1 HP, you cannot receive any stacks from using anything. Obviously not from being attacked because you'll go, but also not from anything else in his kit because you won't have any HP to actually deplete. This is niche, but keep that in mind. Regardless though, Bladie typically gains stacks quickly. Let's talk about what I mean when I say he has split scaling for a sec. Obviously that means that his attacks scale off of more than just one of his stats. Most characters in the game scale on the attack stat to deal damage, while Bladie scales on attack and HP. But that's a bit of a misnomer. While he does have attack scaling, and it matters to an extent, in practice, he's much more focused on HP. HP provides the bulk of his damage, as his skills have drastically higher HP scaling than attack scaling. The split scaling here is then minor, but helpful when relic farming, which you'll do a lot of, it turns out. Bladie's best relic is by far the new Disciple set. Its 2-piece increases his HP, and the 4-piece increases his crit rate when his HP is depleted, which is obviously perfect for Bladie. His best planar set is also the new one, the Arena 2-piece set. This set increases crit rate, and when crit rate reaches 70%, increases basic attack and skill damage by 20%. I can see some people already asking why Inert Salsodo or Fleet of the Ageless aren't great for him. And I mean, they are good. HP increase is great because of his scaling, and crit rate is obviously great too. But one thing I need to point out, and something I wasn't even 100% on for a while, is how important damage percent increases are in this game. Here's the damage calculation in this game. Oh, hold on. This calculation determines all outgoing damage. But what I really want to shine a light on is this right here. Base damage is multiplied by damage percent. Damage percent is anything that says, well, that it's a damage increase, like this line on Inert Salsodo, this on Stadium, and things such as element percent increase. This is so important to know when dealing with DPS characters because it means when you're deciding between, say, a boost to something that scales your skills, such as attack or HP, and something that says it provides a damage increase, you're going to want the damage increase 99 times out of 100. This is because, super simplified, In the formula here, damage percent is multiplicative. Base damage includes stats such as HP or attack, in other words, the skill scaling stats, and then once those are calculated, they then get multiplied by your damage percent multipliers. There's also things such as the cost to overall damage by just stacking the scaling stats, such as attack or HP, since those stats are more readily acquired, while damage percent stats are, again, way more rare. If you've played Genshin, this is why every DPS needs an elemental goblet because, well, of this type of consideration. Just remember that damage percent buffs are multiplicative buffs, and obviously more rare, so they hold more weight over buffs that increase your skill scaling stats. So back to whether you choose Stadium over Salsodo. Well, they both give you damage increases.
Oh my god, what are you doing that?
I'm sorry. But Salsodo's damage increase is tied to ultimate and follow-up damage, while Stadium is tied to basic attack and skill. And while skill does nothing for Blade, the basic attack is a huge source of his damage and what he'll essentially be doing at all times. But if you already have a well-built Salsodo, then use that. Substats and main stats obviously really matter, and Blade obviously still makes a lot of use out of it. Speaking of use, what should you run as his relics? I think the optimal is crit body, HP percent boots, I think the optimal is crit body, HP percent boots, wind damage, boost spear, and HP percent rope. Crit is important for the same reason that damage percent is. Everything gets multiplied by it, so having a great 1 to 2 crit value is important. Also, making sure to hit that 70% crit rate required for the arena set will obviously be important. It's not as difficult as it seems though. Blade naturally gets 12% crit rate if you get those traces, and every character has a base crit rate value of 5% by default. With a crit rate body, that bumps up to 49.4%, then with the Disciple 4-piece set, he'll get to 65%, meaning you only need 5% more crit from substats or from your Lightcone, which we'll talk about in a second. This is why I say farming is so important, because the arena set obviously loses its value over Salsodo if you can't reach that 70% threshold. So absolutely don't just put it on all willy-nilly just because it's technically the best. Lastly, again, I can see someone asking, well, why not just run him as all HP percent since its HP scaling is so high? Well, you could, but not only will we now have the definite crit problem, you'll also be missing out on the win percent damage as well, which we already stated was incredibly important because it's, say it with me, multiplicative, all right. Some may say HP is really important because of that weird note in his ultimate, how he actually does damage based on his max HP and how much he's lost of it over the battle. But when you look at it long enough, you start to realize that it's not that much extra damage. Take for instance, we have 7,000 max HP. The ultimate states that this is capped at 90%, which is 6,300. The ultimate then states at level 6 that 80% of this will then be dealt as damage, which is 5,040 extra damage. That's not the worst extra damage, but it's certainly not more than what you're going to get from 38.8% wind damage boost, as all of his skills, even the ultimate, are wind damage. The only reason to run Blade as HP instead of wind damage would be for survivability, which let's talk about. Blade is going to have a monstrous amount of HP, regardless of how you build him. Yes, he's constantly taking it away with every action, but that doesn't really mean much when even when he's at 50% HP, he'll have more HP than most of the characters in your team at max health. And he'll be at 50% HP most of the time. Blade's ultimate is insane for this. As I said before, Blade's ultimate sets your HP to 50% of max, but this is regardless of where you're at. So you could be at 70% HP and then go to 50% from popping the ultimate, but you could also be at 1 HP, pop your ultimate, putting you back at 50%. This gives him insane survivability if you're playing him intelligently. You could save his ultimate, get him to 1 HP, then pop the ultimate, then get a final stack into his counter, putting you then at 75% HP from when you were at 1 HP. It's crazy. Blade's HP is basically then just a balancing act. I personally don't think this makes him incredibly risky then, because again, at 50%, he'll still have a ton of HP. I think you can then run Blade perfectly fine without a healer. The issue though isn't running him without a healer, it's with the rest of the team not having a healer. So why not have a healer that doesn't use SP and also works for Blade 2 then? And boy, do I have the guy for him. This sad boy with this mad boy. The perfect duo. One man with a coffin and another one who wants to die. Every yaoi ever made manifest to make sure Blade stays as healthy as possible. When I tell you that these characters were made for each other, I don't even mean that in just chemistry, I mean that in their kits. Luocha's auto heal with Blade is insanely synergistic, since Blade's ultimate puts him to 50% HP, meaning Luocha will just immediately heal him back from that. Luocha's field is also insane for Blade, as it causes him to heal from attacks, which are costing him HP. It's a killer duo. Now, are other healers bad for Blade? No, but the issue that I have with Bailu and Natasha is that their heals simply aren't powerful enough at a decent investment for Blade. Blade has an ungodly amount of HP, and Luocha has ungodly heals. Natasha and Bailu also require skill points or energy to heal, meaning you'll have to wait for either to heal him. This also clashes with the fact that Blade doesn't regenerate skill points with his enhanced basics, meaning you're going to be skill point negative if you have to constantly heal him with skill points while buffing him or others with the rest of your team. So who else can Blade work with? Well, a lot of people actually. Blade works as a main DPS, but also as a sub DPS, meaning all supports are decent with him, and the same goes for damage dealers. His biggest issue is something we haven't really seen yet, at least not to this degree, and that's that he has a major anti-synergy problem with shielding units. Anti-synergy is when a character's kit clashes greatly with another's. Blade, for instance, loses a lot of DPS when paired with characters who offer shields. Since shields aren't considered HP depletion, Blade being hit won't count towards his stacks. You essentially want Blade to be targeted so he can get more stacks, but that's also an issue with shielders, since they inherently have high taunt value. Characters like Bronya and Yukong are also incredible with Blade, but especially Bronya. Since Blade is going to be a little slower to attack, which isn't an issue really, Bronya can still make him get more stacks faster. She also provides damage percent boosts with her skill, and attack and crit damage boosts with her ultimate. And tell me again why damage percent is so good? Shut the hell up! So, he can be running a lot of teams just without shielders. But what about his light cones? Why haven't I mentioned that yet? Destruction light cones are bad. Like, they have really odd restrictions, and as a result, a lot of them just don't really work well with Blade. Obviously, his signature light cone is amazing for him. It's just that, unless you're a big spender, I don't suggest using your limited currency on a light cone. Another great alternative is Clara's light cone, something irreplaceable. Whenever Blade defeats an enemy, or is hit, which is more important, he regains HP and deals 24% increased damage. And why is this? Come here! The attack percent increase is also not bad. The simulated universe light cone is like fine, but limiting its damage percent increase to breaking an enemy is a bit annoying. With regards to 4 stars, the battle pass is okay for the healing, but again, I wouldn't suggest like going out of your way for it. A secret vow though is actually not bad. 40% extra damage percent at superimposition 1 when your HP percent is lower than an enemy's is not bad. The only issue I have with this is like, if you're running Blade with someone like Luocha, you're likely not gonna be under like 40% HP, meaning you're gonna miss out on that extra 20% damage bonus, which can be a pretty big bummer. But if you don't have Luocha, I actually think this is a really fantastic light cone for him, especially if you have superimpositions, as you'll be getting that 40% increase for most of the fight, or more, until the enemy gets to like really low percentages. Now I think his best free-to-play option, aside from Clara's in the shop, is actually Collapsing Sky, the 3-star. At superimposition 5, you get 40% extra damage for your basic attacks, which is kinda nutty. Now this only applies to his basics, unlike a secret vow which applies to everything, but still 40% for most of his kit is absolutely nothing to scoff at. So I'd actually suggest this for free-to-plays, especially for people who have Luocha, since you'll be missing out on that extra 20% from a secret vow, unless you have superimpositions on that. So with all this said, do I think Blade is a good pull, or that he's future-proof? Well, I definitely think he has room for growth. I think if any character is introduced in the future that can give other characters taunt value, like a March, but without giving them a shield, that would buff Blade by a lot. Because otherwise, you have to just hope to get hit with him for better stack accumulation. Which, by the way, is why you should run Blade in the middle of teams for this reason. Thank you. I also think that he's gonna naturally be incredible for a long time. HP scaling means you'll be able to survive a lot of content near the end game because enemies start doing crazy numbers. Like I said before, I think if you're playing Blade correctly, you won't have the issue that most thought that you would before his release about him dying a lot. Overall, I think Blade is an A-tier character, and if you were thinking about pulling for him or you already did, he's definitely not a character that you'll regret. At least not this early in the game's life. But regardless of if you're pulling him or not, thank you for watching. I hope that you learned something about the mechanics of this game regardless. Also, thank you to my patrons. You are all amazing, and I can't thank you enough. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.